trauma. Next year, plant trauma and the use of trauma for biodiversity creation.
Is there like a little arrow and it says like tooth here?
Ah, it's working for me. How do I say? We actually gathered actually to talk about Six Mutants. It's sort of more fun than our standard PowerPoint Studious talks. First, I want to tell you about Arabidopsis thaliana. How do I say? A thaliana is the workhorse of molecular biology in plants. It's what's used before they do trials on corn or wheat or sorghum. Because it grows quickly and it's small, it can be studied rather quickly compared to, say, corn or rice. But how do I say, it was the first plant to have its genome fully sequenced, or at least close to fully sequenced. And so it's considered a workhorse, which means that many, many labs around the world study Arabidopsis thaliana. And the reason it's studied is to increase yield or make pharmaceuticals or new kinds of plastics, or in this case, towards sustainability or energy solutions. The Six Mutants we ordered, actually, I looked through about 400 different ecotypes and picked 6 that wowed me, right, that I felt attracted to. Their names are UFO, which is short for unusual floral organs, Li2 semicolon 1, which is actually short for almost glabra, which means nearly hairless. Ag3, which is, how do I say, agamus 3? Well, I kind of want to describe them. It's weird.
It's a double flower.
A double flower. Okay, this helps.
Yeah.
So these are sort of floral mutants. An apatella, which is a flower that often has no petals. Sometimes it has 2 flowers with no petals. So a double no petal flower. And then there's pin-formed, which actually is really weird looking. I'm looking forward to hearing about it. And then Bill 5, which has also a very strange flower. Large rosettes and elongated petioles. In any case, for me, I want to introduce who's here. I'm representing an artist, so for me, I looked at these flowers and I read their descriptions, and I kind of felt like I was doing some sort of online dating, where I was sort of trying to figure out which flowers I wanted for my installation, and it actually turned into a kind of like maybe a sort of love affair. But what I decided actually was, instead of talking just about art or art and technology, etc., is that myself as an artist, Rob Zwijnenberg is here as an art historian, and that on either side of us is Roger van Vught and Bert van der Zaal, who both actually work with plants on a daily basis. So for a change, the artist and the art historian were a little bit out of our element when trying to read these plants. So what I thought would happen would be first, maybe Rob, you want to read them first? No. Maybe I would read them, and then we can get a real reading. I'm sorry. What happened to the wine? I'll pass it here. It's strange to talk about mutant plants as an aesthetic or an attractor. But in particular, I think it's fun to compare the eyes of people who work either in aesthetics or on aesthetics to the eyes of people who work with plants and flowers and actually know them. Because when I look at mutants, I can't see with bird's eyes and I can't see with Rocher's eyes. It would take me years of working with flowers to be able to see them the way they do. So, well, I'm not sure how to proceed. Do you want me to start off with the flower reading?
I think that's best.
Okay. I'll do a flower reading. First of all, when it comes to, I'm not going to read all of them, but what I did was I sort of wrote something in between love poems and online dating, right? So like for UFO 2, I have to say, I appreciate unusual floral organs. If people have them, I'm interested. Let me know. So I wrote to UFO 2, I said, you seem to be really in tune with nature. I'm really into genital chowder, so I would like to taste your mosaic pollinators. As an unusual floral organ strain, you also seem like an extroverted introvert. Or maybe an introverted extrovert. Either way, I think you seem like someone who's exploding with energy on the inside, but doesn't always have the outlet for that unusual floral organ energy. But you seem totally cool, too. Like, get in touch with me. Instead of reading the rest of the love poetry, because I think it's somewhat getting passed around. I'm borrowing Rob's. This is good. This is excellent. So you'll be able to read all the poems. I want to try with my naive eye to actually read some of these. So what I do have is actually some of the descriptions that you get online. So, for instance, Lee 2-1 is almost glabra, which is an almost hairless female plant. So if I was going to look at this one, it's hard for me to see the hairlessness or the femaleness of this plant. I am just looking at what looks like a standard mustard weed, which is what Thallium is, this sort of plant. I mean, I guess I could say I think it looks a little bit hairier than I expected, which is still okay, For someone like here, we have UFO, the one that I just sort of talked about, and it does seem to have some unusual floral organs. In particular, we have 3 different pictures. One is the wild type, so I can actually compare it, and maybe we'll pass this around after a while. There seems to be a giant stamen on one of them.
It's the ovary.
That's the ovary, yeah. It's almost like threatening. But in a way, I don't know why I wouldn't be attracted to a plant with a giant ovaries. Why not? They're unusual. So these are the kind of plants that we're looking at. They're kind of strange. And agamus looks really weird. I know you're going to talk about it a little bit because you showed me some of these flowers, but agamus looks completely out of hand, like wild. I don't know what I wrote to agamus, but I'll read one more. Let's see. I know this is the literal, and this is the less literal. Oh, I just wrote, hey, agamus, I'm going to be honest, I think you're cute, but I'm primarily looking for something physical at the moment. So if that's not your thing, I don't want to waste your time. I really like your bract-like sepals, okay? But I think your lack of petals that was what really got me to respond. So I'm kind of like hoping to date these guys. Now, just to complexify things, we put some bananas inside the Errorarium, and that's to attract the fruit flies, because without the fruit flies, most of these plants will self-fertilize and remain true to their mutant stature. But with the fruit flies, we may have cross-fertilization, which means that we may have a mix of these mutants, which makes them more mutants, or maybe evens them out less. Yeah, it's a question. So I'm going to pass this to Rob to do a reading on these plants, and your paper's back.
Okay, thank you. As close as possible.
Or no, a little lower, right? Is that right? Okay.
This way? It's hard to say something more interesting than Adam already said about these mutants. As an art historian, I would say that, well, actually, I'm not an art historian, I have to admit. So that makes it a bit difficult. But suppose I was an art historian, then I would try to refer them back to the artworks that I know of, or the paintings that I know of. And somehow, I think the painting that comes to my mind when looking at these mutants is not Adam Zaretsky's, Leonardo da Vinci's. How is this painting called? The Virgin of the Rocks. Does everyone has an image of that picture? It is the Virgin meeting. The Virgin fleeing with, so Mary fleeing with Jesus Christ for this massacre of young kids, and then they meet in a mountain John the Baptist, and then they're sitting around the pool, and Leonardo has drawn all kinds of flora from his own area into this painting. And as I'm told from real art historians, you can really recognize the variety of plants that Leonardo has depicted there. So I guess that when I was, or if I was an art historian, it would mean that I tried to understand why an artist would depict either one of these mutants into a religious painting like this meeting of John the Baptist and Christ as a child. And I think that the pin-formed type would fit very well to that situation, with all these long, how do you call these?
Yeah, the flower stems.
The flower stems, stools.
Forgot to make flowers. So.
Well, that is perhaps a good indication of the situation, that they forgot to make flowers. But anyway, and I think you cannot look at the aesthetics of flowers, the aesthetics of mutants, without thinking of the ethics of what happens to these plants, and how we are able to transform these. Which, now that I come to think of it, makes biotechnology kind of similar to painting. So I'm impressed, and I sure want to know them further. And I hope I can build somehow a relationship with this machine, with especially the pin-formed, who forgot to make flowers. Well, I would not say that is the story of my life, to forget flowers, to forget to make flowers, but still, it has a kind of symbolic meaning. I go for the pinformed and for the combination of the aesthetic and ethics. The fact that we, with poison, make this plant forget to make his flowers. It's a kind of tragic, isn't it? If you come to think of it. Which I liked very. It has this tragedy around it. So the pinformed is fine with.
Excellent.
Shall I?
Yeah. Okay, Roger. So I mean, since I put Rob and I to embarrass ourselves a little, not understanding flower anatomy quite very well, I'm going to ask you to explain these a little bit, like what their differences are, but also if you want to go ahead and feel uncomfortable by commenting on what you find attractive or what you don't about them. I know you were kind of excited when you looked them up. So,
well, I have my horticulturist point of view, which, as you said, is most of all I look at them as what they are. So it's not so much a romantic view, but I do love them a lot, and I love mutants, and I think everyone here loves mutants, even though nobody knows it. But everyone who loves a Chihuahua dog or a pompon flower dahlia, it's all mutants. So we are surrounded by mutants, and so these fit in very well. And to me, I really love the agamos variety because it's abundant and it has many petals, like a pompon dahlia. And the lead 2 / what was it 1? To me, it's the glabrous one.
almost glabrous.
Almost glabrous. Yeah, to me, it's probably the most boring one. I would say it's the Britney Spears. You know, it's glabrous, but that's all. You know, it has no, and the pinformed. It's well, if you have a desire to make children, a plant that makes no flowers is it's interesting, but it's it's the end of the line. So it's in UFO. I'm not sure what it's doing here. You have the wild type at first, and then you have UFO, and it's number 1, which seems that it's a flower that's only producing the female parts, and then the second one, it seems that it's only producing the male parts. So it's, to me, that one looks a little bit like the drag queen. One day it's a male, and the next day it's a female. So it's maybe I will not say that I will be a rival for you in your online dating, but if it would be the case, it would be agamos. So let me know if agamos and you are not working. Then, but it's no. But most of all, I think the wild type is also pictured here, and you can see that that's the best working variety. Still, that's the reason why you see that one in the streets everywhere. So let's not forget that one either. But it's and apetala. Sadly it's a very poor picture. It's you can hardly see, but apetala means that it doesn't have any petals. So it ignored any attempt to be beautiful. It's just there for reproduction. So it's more
Oh wow.
Yeah. So that's my view.
That's a weird reading.
So I will leave it with that.
I wonder. I mean, I just wanted to say with UFO, if most flowers are hermaphrodites, they're like male and female mixed. So to actually find mutants that are male or female is very heterosexual, like you said. I mean, it may be that they're drag queens as flowers, but to force flowers to become male or female. It's kind of how do I say? It's a little bit human-centric. So it's kind of interesting that we got intrigued by them. So I want to just introduce Bert van der Zaal because Bert works with Arabidopsis in the lab, and we've been making some strange plants there. Feel free to talk about the one we've been making as well, but I'm sure you have some way of commenting on these mutants. Some of them you know probably more intimately than most.
Yes, thank you all. I don't know all these mutants by heart, of course, but I've seen a few of them, and I hope that I convince you that almost hairless ones are the most interesting. But that's maybe a personal view. But as you see, these different plants, well, first of all, I must maybe remind you that Arabidopsis as an organism has about the same number of genes as we humans do. It makes only little difference. So these plants are very complex, and I see these organisms as they are depicted here, these different mutants, as examples of plants, of mutants which have led us to a great deal of understanding plant development. So I don't know by heart all the different papers which describe them and which were the main insights, but for instance for floral development, the Agamus was a very instructive one. It explained to us all how floral development is regulated, and I think a very nice point which came forward is that you have there the idea that there are master switches in development, and when you have a lesion in one particular gene, you might change from developing into a petal, into a stamen, for instance. So you see all different layers of genes which are superimposed upon each other, and the total result is just a proper development of the right organ at the right position. So this is, I think, the beauty of these mutants, that they have led us to a better understanding. So of course I don't look at these mutants as an artist. I'm totally incapable of doing that. But yeah, you can feel some love for them because they have led us to so much insights. And well, I don't have a particular favorite. I mentioned I think I know quite a bit of the pin-formed one, which is also kind of a bold mutant because it doesn't produce any structures at the top of the flower stalk, so no flowers. But I think all of them, I think, have their own interest, and I can recognize why they have been selected, because they are quite different and giving a good spectrum of the different phenotypes or appearances that these plants Arabidopsis plants can have. But I think looking at them, a favorite one is hard to pick. So I could say that I love Arabidopsis as a species because it has given us also insight in our own development. And of course we also share some genes which are also present in plants. And just the paradigms which came forward from Arabidopsis genetics has also led us to the better understanding of our own development. And so the development in the Errorarium is something that we are all going through in the near future when things go out of hand, climates, I don't know, overpopulation. So maybe we are in a kind of Errorarium ourselves. So that's I'm very much interested to see what will happen. Yeah.
Before I want to have people ask questions. This is a fun one because we have quite an array of ways of seeing right here. But I did want to ask, how the heck do pinforms reproduce without their flowers?
I was wondering the same thing. Yeah.
You don't know?
Well,
I mean, how do we get seeds for them?
Well, they can occasionally form a flower. Yeah, or what often happens with mutants, that you keep them as the heterozygous one. So this is one which looks normal, but when you have the progeny, then a quarter of them is, of course, of the severe mutant type. Yeah.
Okay. So I want to, I'm sure this is fun and confusing for the crowd, so if we have a few questions, I'm going to pass the mic.
No, the mic doesn't work anyway, so.
It doesn't? All right. Just doesn't work.
It's for decoration.
All right, so well, I'm going to point it just out of
Just for decoration.
authoritativeness.
Is there someone with a question?
Ask a question. Who's got one? We're going to pass this around too, so you can form a question out of what you see. What you see is not always what you get. Gert. Hey.
Hi.
Would you like to say something about the flowers or even about this whole shebang?
Yes, maybe I will. Well, no, I don't need that because it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. It doesn't record.
It does. Okay. Well,
Do you get sound at all?
only
if you hold it.
Oh, okay.
So that's better. Well, okay. Well, as a botanist, I'm always surprised at the things that may happen in nature. And I think I usually fall for the wild type. It's Well, the other plants are usually a bit sad. I mean, the ones that have been experimented with. And as a scientist, I always have found it more or less acceptable within limits to experiment. But it's really new to me that you experiment with living things for art, out of curiosity. That's something quite new, a new idea to me. So I'm really wondering what the comments of the people here will be on what we are doing here to the plants, because I can't quite imagine that they really will like it. But people like twiddling with the knobs, and it's a very interesting thing. So, well, we are looking forward to having the seeds. And I just wanted to hark back a bit on your Leonardo da Vinci. We like watching paintings and old paintings, and I have also been involved in a project where we described plants on paintings, and it's not always possible, because even in very naturalistic looking paintings, sometimes the painter just takes his freedom and invents a plant. So that's a very old thing, and I want to give you another way of looking at this kind of painting, because after you've finished looking at the plants, look at the feet of the people depicted. The feet of the people depicted. Well, in most of these paintings where plants are depicted in a very detailed way, there are usually some saints or monks or whatever who are walking on their bare feet or standing on their bare feet, and they're usually large and very dirty.
They're hobbits.
It seems like a sun-changing time.
Errorarium, and someone's pushing the buttons. So,
excellent. In context with what you say, I actually agree. Like, I often think that what I'm doing is offering the public a chance to play with life in the same way that people do in the lab, but without knowledge production on their side. And what I find is that most people want to get their fingers on the knobs, even if they know that it might not be so good for the organisms involved, because they want to try it. And that curiosity versus ethics continuum, it's not perfect. It's maybe 1 in 50 or 1 in 100 that says no, and I love those people. They're like, I'm not doing that. It seems I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm not sure if it's nice, you know. I love those people, so I'm glad that you would mention this. But at the same time, there is a question, and this is the question of anti-anthropocentrism. If we don't like the sounds, I happen to like the sounds of the Errorarium, but a lot of people don't. It doesn't mean the plants don't like them. You know, it's this real question. And we had some weird experiments with cockroaches, and they seem to like certain sounds more than others. We think they like them. So it's hard to tell what we're doing as humans. It's actually hard to tell. And along those lines, we invented plant, the idea of this cross-fertilization, and maybe this can come back up as we take questions, but what does it mean to take 2 mutants and mix them together? I mean, I'm thinking of Cohen van Mechelen's chickens, where he's mixing all the pure breeds into one to try to make a cosmopolitan chicken. And I'm thinking of George Gessert does some work like this with flowers already, of hand pollination and letting the public make an aesthetic decision. These type of things are they're sort of dangerous. There's a reason that the hairs on the back of your neck might perk up, but it's part of the reasoning behind this type of art for me. Anyway, we do have to take at least 3 questions. I'm looking at a star-studded cast in the audience, so don't everyone raise their hand at once, but who's up?
A question to Bert: why do you are more interested in the not hairy ones?
Oh, hold on, Bert.
Yeah, if I look in the mirror, I have to be interested.
Okay. Another question. Come on down. I'm going to start calling on you. Anna, Laura, Tamar, come on. Bring it on. David. Ina. speechless. Come on. Where's my fearless friends? Blue, do you want to ask a question? No. All right, David, you've been working with the machine for a week.
Yeah, it's true. I've been working with the machine for a week, and it's true about the anthropogenic, the feeling you've been talking about. Because I do feel sorry for the plants, because I've been standing 3 days next to the machine, what was on at full power, the weirdest sounds, and it seems that people they're trying the knobs and looking for a certain sound, and when it's the most horrible sound, they walk away. And when you're standing next to it, that's that's terrible. Yeah, but yeah, we've been talking about these plants, and yeah, I can't really come up with a question that I didn't ask yet. So maybe for someone who's new.
Do you think when you continue the process, you know what you want to do, and actually, you know, have other human genetics informed in some way in the plants, that affects the audience or people playing in a different way? For instance, you know, added up to, of course, that it affects the plants themselves, the mutants.
I mean, for me, I'm trying my best not. I suppose, I mean, what I'm trying to show is that, this is strange, when it comes to data production, when a scientist designs an experiment, they tend to be looking for something to prove, but that's, how do I say, that's the smallest effect that their experiment has. In other words, what's actually proven in a scientific paper is very minuscule compared to the number of variables that have actually been changed. So the amount of anti-knowledge that is produced with every bit of knowledge is actually greater. In this way, I sort of talk about specialization. In some ways, I make fun of artists, because artists will pick up a paintbrush and do this or that. But it's often these extreme specialties, not just in science, but extreme specialties, even fetishes, that people perform that actually make for the most unusual creations. The creations of these plants themselves are more unusual than the scientific papers that have proven things about them. So in this way, I'm sort of like, I'm saying almost the opposite. Although I agree with some of what you said, of what Bert is saying, I'm saying that these plants may have been helpful to understanding developmental biology, but actually they've created more chaos in the world than the facts that they've created. So I don't know if, Bert, if you want to comment on that. That's
Well, it's a bit hard to comment upon this. I think it reminds me of a lot of conversation we had, and it was always very interesting, very funny. Yeah, I cannot fully agree with this because yeah, but I think then I do this from another completely different point of view, because I think yeah, a scientist should look for those variables which makes the biggest difference in the phenotype of the plant, for instance. Those which don't evoke anything, yeah, you don't learn that much from it. So, well, you could say as a piece of art, I think maybe not claiming that I'm an artist or that I see how I should be one, but each organism is a kind of a work of art, because if you realize that you are working with a given genome, every one of us has in all of his or her cells the same genomic DNA. Yet our different cells are doing different jobs. Our brain cells are doing different things from our heart cells and muscles. So this is also happening in plants. So you see that somehow each organism is finding a solution for living. Each cell is finding a solution for living with the same type of DNA, which is in kind of a miracle, you could say. Our brain cells know what to do, our other cells know what to do, also in the plant, which is maybe for a lot of you more boring. But they also have different cell types, which know exactly where they are in the plant and also know how to behave. They all do this with the same genome. So there's some kind of master regulator over the whole genome which determines how the cell will behave. And this is something that's very intriguing, and I think this Errorarium gives us maybe some food for thought, that we can think of what can happen to these plants when someone else someone is playing a different tune on the genomic piano, if I may say it like in such a manner. So that's. But I forgot what the question was, Adam.
Pretty good. We should ask Rob about. Can we ask you, Rob, about the difference, the different type of attraction that scientists and artists have for mutants?
Well, perhaps I first have a question for David. I looked on YouTube to the film of Lolab, and I saw that a lot of people working, injecting the zebrafish, and I think the same goes for this Errorarium, said that they had ethic hesitations, but that their curiosity was bigger than their ethic hesitations, and you refer to that as well. And that because they wanted to inject something, or in this case, they want somehow to influence something, they take the risk, or not even the risk, but they kill this embryo. And I was wondering what you make of that. And perhaps it's also a question to all of you, that our curiosity to experience something, that is to inject an embryo, or to change by audio perhaps the growth of these mutants, is so much stronger than our ethical hesitations to kill or to transform a living organism. I was amazed by that. And you will answer the question for David. Okay. No?
Sorry, David. Sorry. This was the reason that I asked this other question, because I think the other question about, whether the audience might react on a different way, ethically, in playing with the Errorarium as soon as they understand that their own genomics some way is involved. Of course, also like through projection, but it's something. And why I ask that is because I don't think the assumption, as you give it now, is the right one. Curiosity without putting anything of yourself at risk is no curiosity. That's I think a very important thing. So if we are not at risk, it's like how do you say it? Superficial kind of. It's of course curiosity, but curiosity, starts when your own subjectivity becomes at risk. When you actually, make another step towards the other. There's a difference. Yeah. So sorry that I wanted to see it as possibly an addition to the question.
So you suggest that there is no opposition between the ethical hesitations and the curiosity, that they kind of strengthen each other. That because of the ethical hesitations, because you know that you're going to kill or transform, possibly transform living organisms, this curiosity is so strong that there's a combination of curiosity and.
That it becomes a risk to ourself, even in a projection, that then we also come closer to this ethical, So yes, curiosity and an ethical position can come close to each other. It only depends on how do I say that?
Microphone.
What if it's only a very shallow desire for some kind of experience.
That's the curiosity you are talking about. So. Yeah, that's sure.
And I still want to answer the question. I think the location was very important in this situation as well. Yeah. People paid almost 200 euros just to get in there and to be entertained, and they wanted to get the most out of it. It was they they thought this might be some people told me that this might be the only option in their whole lives to inject zebrafish embryo, and they were hesitating, but they thought I have to I have to try it, and I can think about it later because this is the only option I have in my life.
What if we take next time human embryos?
I think when it's there at Lowlands, they think it's okay because it's there, because there are so many drunk and drugged people that they thought about the limits.
It also had to do with the fact that it was mediatized. You could follow your own injecting on a big screen together with your friends. And I don't think it has that much to do with drunk or doped people. I think it also has to do with the fact that there is a huge amount of trust between the people there, that everything you do there at this festival is checked and safe, and it's packaged revolution.
We're going to get to you. I know you're there, but I want to problematize this. It's fun. I mean, first of all, yes, a rock and roll concert or even Hortus Botanicus. With art, there isn't necessarily an avoidance of authority that leads to a sort of Stanford experiment, where if you're given permission to do things, even if you were trained to believe that they were not okay to do, when someone says the law is lifted, people often do amazing things. In order to problematize it, aside from the rock and roll context or even this arboretum supporting plant torture, things like that, I want to problematize the saving of exotic species, which you do here, and not so much that I'm against that. I'm really into biodiversity and preserving it, but how do you decide which species to save and which ones fall by the wayside? I want to ask both you, Roger and Gerta, because it's the flip side of what we're talking about.
Yeah, actually, personally, we're not like a god. It's not up to us to decide which species can survive. And that's something that bothers me a lot, that, animals with a high cuddle factor, like giant pandas, have apparently a bigger right to live than, for example, an Arabidopsis. There are many plants and animals which are inconspicuous and that are dying out every day that no one ever cares about. And also that's why I'm personally never against things like this, because evolution, to me, all these forms, because these were formed not with inserting strange genes. These were just happened by the genes owned by the plants already. It's just the first step in evolution. So yeah, I never have problems with that. I'm always amazed with people that have problems with that, because every species have a right to live, but also every species have a right to evolve, because sorry? Well, people have done this for thousands of years already. Because if we haven't done this playing before, then we would have never been the people that we are today. Because all the crops that we grow and all the animals that we breed are not what they used to be in nature anymore. Well, most of them are not anymore. So that's why we've been playing with this since ages. And yeah, believe it or not, but something like the apple, how we eat it, the only right of existence it has right now is because we made it, because the apple that we eat was never there in nature. So if you would ask that apple, are you happy that the people played with your genes so long ago? It would probably say yes, because if people didn't, then this apple would not be there. So ask it to the Chihuahuas and the Saint Bernard dogs and anything we grow. Every kind of cabbage is probably one of the same species, so there's all mutations of one single one. So
what about, I think the botanical gardens are working on saving some species.
Yes, we do here. We have species that are, just one or two left in the world, and we try to reproduce them.
how do they get chosen?
They don't get chosen. I wish I could choose them, but just sadly enough, such species come on your path very rarely, because they usually die a silent death somewhere in a rainforest which has been cut down, and yeah, then it's already too late. So it's very rare that you can get hold of a species which is almost extinct. So we never choose them. They come on our path, and when we can grab them, we hold on to them and just breed them and spread them around again.
Here to comment.
Well, yes, of course, we can't save all the species because there aren't too many of them. And one of the main tasks of a botanic garden is also to make people aware of the danger, so that they are more careful with habitats and the plants, the places where the plants actually grow, because we can only save a few species here. I mean, you can have about 20,000 plants in the botanic garden and that's it. And what Rogier says, they just cross your path, and sometimes you're lucky and then you grab them. But, well, you can't save them all. Only by way of the people who get concerned about this kind of thing, to make it worldwide.
I've been ignoring some of the people's. Yes.
But then the question remains the same, like how do you choose? So you're saying that some plants cross your path, but you can't save them all, so how do you pick the ones that you do save? I didn't really get an answer.
We care about your words.
Oh. You try to save the plants that come across your path, and of course you start building up a network, and Rogier has been working here for some years now, and he has brought a new network to the garden, so that means different plants, and also you cannot take care of all the plants because gardeners and well they just get offered to you, or you come across them and then you think, yes, that's a good idea, but at first you have to be aware that they are threatened, and then you have to be able to get hold of them, and then you have to be able to care for them, because if they are rare enough. I mean, if someone comes with an oleander that they bought years ago on the market, and it may even be a beautiful plant, and then we say, well, just give it to the old people's home next door because we can't have it. Yeah.
Well, you do know if they're rare or not, because of course we have books and we have internet. And sometimes we don't. We have a tree here which is a very sad, it looks like a weeping willow, and it has been growing here for 30 years. When someone said, well, I've brought this plant here for my research, which is over 30 years ago, and it only occurred in this very little small forest in Madagascar. And our plant was the only one known in existence, because it's not very beautiful. It just happened to be there because this scientist once brought it here. But he said this entire forest is gone. So it's very likely that this single plant you have growing here is the last one of its kind. So as soon as you hear that, you're not going to investigate if it's true or not. When I hear something like that, the first thing I do is try to duplicate it and to make as many cuttings as possible. And then when we realize, oh, you know, there was behind the parking lot, there were 10,000 more, well, that's okay. But in some cases, like Gerda said, what's a very important aspect is also the education. We have a little shrub here from Tanzania, which is also the last one of its kind, and it's very easy to reproduce by cuttings. You can make thousands of them if you want, but this one single plant cannot pollinate itself, which means that it cannot make seeds. So it's impossible for this species to replant it in nature, because you plant it and that's it. It will grow for some years and then it will die because it won't produce seeds. So in fact it's already extinct. But this plant we just reproduce by cuttings and spread them around to other gardens to tell these stories. And also because if you have a very rare snow leopard, it's behind a big fence and people can only watch it. But here you can actually touch a plant which is extinct. So that's why it's also the part of education. But there are different projects and we do what we can. But the first thing that you try to do is keep the genetic gene pool as big as possible, because that's what you need. If you just have one left, it's actually already too late.
I mean, I sort of bring this up because we were talking about what people will do towards the creation of difference, and we're also talking about what people will do towards the preservation of difference. And in a lot of ways, the ethics are similar. I know, Bert, I talked to you about, I asked you if you were a mutagen, like more than most humans, because you make mutant plants. And I remember you saying, yes, in some ways, but also you took an airplane over here, Adam, you know? You sort of took me to task as to who's making mutants more, or who's decimating the environment more, someone experimenting in the laboratory or someone flying around the world a lot. But when it comes to rareness, I mean, rareness itself, whether it's through natural biodiversity or the creation of mutants, we have this sort of economy of aesthetics that seems to, it has a relationship to ethics, but the relationship, a lot of it seems to be that ethics go down as rareness increases. It's almost like how do I say, we get more desperate in the face of difference.
Am I rare enough to live?
Yeah. So I don't know if, Bert, do you want to comment on that? Is that too wild to pass to you?
Well, I didn't really understand the last part, and maybe you can be a bit more.
I guess when I say that ethics, that people go to more lengths to create mutants and more lengths to preserve biodiversity. So to create new differences and to preserve differences that have occurred through natural selection or in the course of time, that they'll go to greater lengths beyond even what is considered to be normal human behavior. I mean, I take this actually like making mutants in the lab or preserving biodiversity. You guys are weird to me. I mean, that's a compliment from an artist. Well, no offense, but
maybe deep inside we are aware of the fact that diversity is one of the most important things, because every time people often ask, you know, why is it important, or why is it so bad if one species gets extinct? And it's very important to have a big biodiversity, because the Earth is constantly, you know, in movement. And at one point, maybe it's because of the humans, the Earth will get warmer, or we get an ice age. And only when you have a very huge biodiversity, which also includes mutants, the natural environment is, you know, is able to withstand it. Because if you have one single famous stories of the Wollemi pine, we have some here, and they rediscovered this tree after it was thought to be dead for millions and millions of years. It was a living dinosaur, but all the trees were almost exactly the same. And what happened is that because of the humans, one little fungus entered this valley where it lived, and all the trees are sick. And that's because there is no diversity. So that's why diversity in all its shapes is essential to keep life on the planet.
When I follow your line of argument, then I think it's best if we also make human mutants.
Maybe, yeah. If you know,
it's an interesting thought.
Yeah. No, well, just to give us a silly example, you know, Waterworld, you know, the movie where you have the well, it's actually based on a mutant. I don't know who plays it, but it's a human mutant who got gills, and it plays in the Earth many years from now, where the sea level has risen so much that there's practically only sea, and this human, because it has gills, has a much better way to survive. So I would not say that it's, well, we humans are smart enough to enforce mutation, but in nature it just happens. And to all the plants and animals which does not happen to have mutated the right direction, they will all die. That's just it.
We have a couple of questions.
It's not a question, it's a remark. As we are now, humans are already incredibly diverse. Maybe not as diverse as dogs are, but we come close. Much diverser than most other species on Earth. Look at elephants, you'll basically see the same elephant all over Africa. Look at humans, you see humans of completely different types over Africa. Look at the rest of the world, you see the same again. So maybe we have been doing pretty well in producing all those mutants already, and we are in a good position to face the coming environmental crisis.
But that's But that's a point of view from biodiversity. But what about the creolization of the world in terms of racism popping up, or other kinds of emotions of different races amongst each other?
In that case, it's maybe again this awareness that we all have inside. Maybe racism is just born out of maybe jealousy. You know, someone who is different might be better than you. You know, just kick him away. Yeah, well, where does fear come from? It's why would you be afraid? Only if it would endanger you. So
racism is essential in maintaining this diversity. I'm going to be provocative, but if humans wouldn't have been fairly averse against mating with people from, well, with different looks, there wouldn't be that many different forms of people on the world. We would all be more or less the same, looking like a bit like a cross between Rogier and Adam.
Comments. First of all, I mean, when it comes to, I was told by a genetic advisor that the best thing I could do for my future children was to marry someone from the opposite side of the earth, due to hybrid vigor, and due to the fact that most tribes or populations are bottlenecks, you know, whether it's caused by xenophobia or being landlocked, etc., or not being able to get over that mountain. But how do I say? We're doing this experiment with these 6 mutants where we're cross-fertilizing them. So we are, and so I would ask, this one's sort of fun. Bert, I know you can handle this because there's 2 questions in one. One is, what is there in diverse genomes that can respond to catastrophe? Like, where are the sudden genomic instigations when there's a sudden eco alteration? You know, there are places in our genome then respond, only then respond to crisis. But also, what is the effect of we call it miscegenation or a mixing, crossing, besides hybrid vigor, that might actually make for less diversity or weakening of that sort of emergency response?
Well, it's quite a complicated question. I don't know where to start. Well, if you talk about handling different situations, well, if you look at the population level, then of course it's the genetic variation which determines who is the best fitted, I think, for the challenge that is being met. But I think apart from this, you could wonder, as you said a few minutes ago, that we have the same genome in all our different cells, yet these cells are different. So you could say maybe imposing a kind of stress upon a particular set of cells might get these cells to another state, which might make them endure this treatment for a longer period. I wish I had something like that. Maybe you see it. I went to the dental surgeon yesterday. I got a huge swelling, so maybe these cells will respond and that I will be in less pain soon. At least I hope so. But normally I think everything will revert to normal. But the big question still is, I think, in biology. I think, what's really the basis of heredity? Of course, we have the DNA, we have the changes, and you can say these are mutations. But we also have, which is a kind of a modern topic, and maybe it has. Effects are a bit exaggerated sometimes. You also have the epigenetics, so the layer of regulation which is imposed upon the normal genomic information, and this could be very important. I think maybe also in human development, maybe the fact that we have grown so tall and continue to be tall is also and got adapted to drinking milk, for instance. Well, these might also be epigenetic traits that became somehow stabilized in the human population. Well, these things might also have happened in plants. Maybe the fact that they have to live for generation and generation for so long under specific conditions might have triggered their differentiation, that we might say, well, they are a different species now. But basically, what triggered their differences were not really the genetic mutations, which might still now be there at this moment, but these were maybe epigenetic ones, which steered these organisms, pushed them into different directions. And what we see now as genetic variation at the level of DNA mutations is maybe some noise. Maybe the big changes happened by triggering certain areas of the genome to respond differently, depending on the environment. So is this something what you would like to hear, Adam? Or
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That's good. I mean, I always wonder, that means to some extent it's managed experience. So I mean, it's experiential instead of a program that you just recapitulate the program. Okay.
Yeah, I think for those who are into biology, but well, of course, this has been said also by Lamarck, who was also had models for evolution preceding Darwin, of course. But there were a lot of laughs about Lamarck after the Darwinian theory was explained in terms of genetics and of DNA and letters A, C, G, T. Yeah? So then we thought, well, this is all nonsense. But now you see, I don't want to say that Lamarckism is the true driving force on Earth, but it certainly must play a role. I think that's now recognized by many people who are in genetics. So some variables are there. You can't immediately explain them by small mutations. There might be something else. So but I don't want to say that Lamarckism explains it all. So that then I think I would not make myself very popular among scientists. But I think it should give us some thought, and I think that's why also this Errorarium, or the way that we want to use plants in the lab, that we treat them with a different, that's a key player which could act upon the genome. So we could maybe influence the genome, not its sequence by itself, but just the ways different parts of the genome, the ways that different parts of the genome respond to a trigger. Well, if we can influence that, we might get different types of plants, and I think we indeed see that it can happen. So plants, organisms might take on different shapes when their genome is differently expressed. So when the traits are there, but they're at different levels. So you can say you can fine-tune maybe the development by changing parameters, and I think also the Errorarium, that you can dial all these tunes, is a good parallel view of this kind of thing.
Interesting. I want us to come back next year for another conference, maybe on trauma as knowledge production, or maybe we can further the difference, if there is any, between creating mutants and preserving diversity, which it's actually an interesting debate. But for now, I'm going to let us go get another glass of wine. I want to thank you all for coming. Said that they're weeds, so they die really easy. They're not easy to grow in captivity. And exotic plants are easy to grow in captivity. Bert said, well, they're weeds, they'll be fine. I think they're going to grow well. That's my guess. They're in a greenhouse with other plants, and I think they might actually enjoy this. Like, I think it might be a disco for them. Like, they're going to end up party plants. Or at least, maybe not them, but their kids will grow up and be like, I don't know why, but I like loud music.